Hi everyone, and welcome to this online short course, the topic of which is incentives in computer science. I'll be your instructor. My name's Tim Roughgarden. I'm a professor at Columbia University, specifically in the engineering school, and even more specifically in the Department of Computer Science. And I'm very excited to have this opportunity to give you a sort of teaser, a 4 to 5 hour bite-sized chunk of one of the courses I teach at Columbia, this course called Incentives in Computer Science. So this is a course, I originally imagined it aimed at computer science undergraduates. So my goal was to give CS majors tools from economics and game theory to help them think in a new way about some of the engineering design decisions that many of them were likely to face post-graduation. But as I've now taught this a few times, including the most recent semester at Columbia in spring 2020, I realized that the course seems to resonate much more broadly than just computer science majors who are going to go off into industry. In fact, of all of the many different courses I've taught over my career, this is the one where I get the most student engagement in lectures. So I'm hoping some of that excitement will also come through in this sort of bite-sized 4 to 5 hour online version. One cool thing about this course is it's very broadly accessible, and in particular for the lectures I've cherry-picked for the short course, it should be accessible including to, say, incoming freshmen. I'm certainly not going to assume that you have any background in economics or game theory. I don't assume that for the on-campus version of the course either, nor will I assume really any computer science background. For the 30-hour version that I teach on campus, some of the lectures require some computer science background, but for the short course, we're going to stick to the most highly accessible topics. We will on occasion do some short mathematical arguments, but it'll be very simple math, pretty much nothing that's beyond what you'd learn in high school. So that's a little bit about me, that's a little bit about you. Now let's talk a little bit about the course and the topics that we're going to cover in the next several hours. So the course is organized into 6 short modules. So let me tell you about each of those in turn on this slide. Obviously, a natural way to go through the course is from the beginning to the end, but actually these modules are largely self-contained. So if you want to jump around, you should feel free to do so. So in the first module, I'm basically going to justify the existence of this course. I want to convince you that actually incentives play a pretty big role in computer science and in technology. So we'll look at lots of the different technology platforms that we're very accustomed to using, be it Amazon or be it Uber, Tinder, whatever. And we'll notice that really all of these platforms can be thought of as markets. And so economic market design principles are important for building and maintaining those systems. So we'll talk about a number of examples of markets in technology. We'll look at differences between different types of markets, like more decentralized versus more centralized. We'll take a look at the New York Stock Exchange, how it works, some issues because of the current implementation, specifically high-frequency trading, and we'll ask the question, if we could redesign the stock market from scratch, how would we do it? We'll also talk a little bit about network effects and the consequent inevitability of monopolies in technology, and then also how monopolies lead to congestion, a basic challenge in market design. In the second module, we will talk about what is perhaps the most famous example in all of game theory. A very simple example, but that perfectly crystallizes the tension between what's good for the individual and what's good for the collective, a tension that we see all around us in the world all the time. It's an example known as the prisoner's dilemma. Everybody should know about the prisoner's dilemma. I don't care what your major is, I don't care what your interests are, everybody should know the prisoner's dilemma. It's just very helpful in understanding the world around us. On top of that, the lessons from the prisoner's dilemma have informed certain pieces of technology. And as a case study, I'll highlight something known as BitTorrent, which is arguably the dominant paradigm in the peer-to-peer transfer of very large files. And under the hood in BitTorrent, there literally is something that takes direct inspiration from a repeated version of the prisoner's dilemma. The theme of the third module will be asymmetric information and the challenges that it poses. And specifically, we will look at moral hazard and adverse selection. Again, 2 concepts everybody should know about. Knowing about those 2 concepts really help you, diagnose what's going wrong in lots of real-life situations and scenarios all around us. Moral hazard arises when an individual is incentivized to act in a way that would be harmful to others. Meanwhile, adverse selection is when a lack of information in a market leads to the exit of all but the lowest quality participants. So in the fourth module, I want to tell you about auctions, which maybe sounds weird, right? What do auctions have to do with computer science? I say auctions, probably you have in mind, like an auction for a famous painting somewhere here in the city at like Christie's or Sotheby's. But actually, it turns out auctions are one of the main drivers of the internet economy. Companies like Google and Facebook, their entire business model revolves around auctions, specifically auctions for advertising. Every time, for example, you type a query into Google, you search for something, you get a mix of two different types of results. You get organic results, which are links that are deemed relevant to your query by Google's internal ranking engine, so by PageRank. You also get sponsored results. And so advertisers have submitted bids into Google's ad system. And when you type in that search query in real time, an auction happens between various competing advertisers vying for your attention, vying for the privilege to have their link shown on your search results page. So I want to tell you a little bit about under the hood, how all of that works. Our penultimate module, so module number 5, that's going to be about participatory budgeting, which is part of a very cool movement, which in particular is happening more and more here in New York City, toward large-scale democracy. So the idea is you want to get lots of people involved in decisions which historically have been made by a small number of people. So for concreteness, you might want to think, you have a city or you have a district, and they have some budget, and then trying to figure out, which public projects should they invest in. So maybe they have to decide, should we make the roads better, or instead should we modernize our schools? Which one are you going to do? So I'm going to tell you about sort of new systems that allow everybody to weigh in on these types of budgeting decisions. Last but not least, for our 6th module, I want to talk about Bitcoin, the world's most famous cryptocurrency and most famous blockchain. So after that module, you'll both have a pretty good sense of how Bitcoin actually works, and that's sort of a beautiful piece of technology that's fun to learn about in its own right. And you'll also learn about how incentives are actually really crucial to the healthy functioning of Bitcoin. So that's about all we're going to have time for. It's really just sort of a bite-sized chunk, really just a teaser of the on-campus course that I teach on incentives in computer science. So if these lectures leave you hungry for more, as I hope they do, I encourage you to go to my webpage, timruffgarden.org. From that webpage, you'll be able to find links to previous offerings of incentives in computer science. And there you will find lecture notes on many, many more topics than what I'll have time to cover in this online short course. So that's where we're going to be going over the next few hours. Now let's move into the first module and start recognizing markets are all around us.